Oh my goodness, that was fun, wasn't it?
It sure was. Mr. Beanbody, you didn't forget about
About the Revolutionary War? Oh, certainly not. Not at all. If you recall, we saw how many colonists' favorable attitudes toward the mother country changed to unfavorable as Parliament imposed more and more taxes on the North Americans to raise money to pay for England's war debts. The colonists' anger also grew as Parliament abolished some personal liberties, such as the right to a trial by jury in certain cases. Parliament also severely punished the colonists when they waged protests against what they felt were unreasonable taxes. In time, British troops were called in after more violent protests erupted. We left off at the First Continental Congress, which met in September 1774, and among other things, advised people to start arming themselves in case of a British attack. But the Congress also composed a respectful message to be sent directly to King George, saying that dangerous men in Parliament were trying to stand between him and his loyal subjects in America. Finally, the First Continental Congress agreed to meet again if the king did not respond to their complaints by May 1775.
About that letter to King George, does that mean the colonists didn't want independence?
Well, let's see what our friends at the Green Dragon Inn and Tavern thought about self-rule.
It's going to happen sooner or later. I say the sooner we break away, the better it will be for everyone.
Such talk is treasonous. You can be hanged for those words. All good Englishmen, and I count myself as one of them, must stand with our king and mother country. I say no to independence.
How can we stay loyal to a country that takes away our rights and treats us as if we were second-class citizens?
Honestly, I just don't know what to think.
So, about half the colonists wanted independence in 1774. About 1 in 5 were loyal to England, and the rest just couldn't make up their minds. Now, let's move on to April 1775, to what many consider to be the opening shot in America's war for independence. By then, many colonists thought war with Great Britain was likely, so they began to store guns and ammunition in secret hiding places throughout the colonies. One area British authorities were especially concerned about was located in and around Concord, Massachusetts, a village west of Boston, known for its militant anti-British sentiments. Early in the spring of 1775, British General Thomas Gage made plans to seize the concealed weapons on April 19th. But American spies learned of the plan, and on April 18th, late at night, patriots Paul Revere, taking one route, and William Dawes, taking another, quickly rode out of Boston, heading westward to warn the colonists of the upcoming raids. At sunrise, the British troops, or regulars, marched into Lexington, a town roughly 2/3 of the way to Concord. About 70 American militiamen, or Minutemen, stood waiting for the soldiers in Lexington Green, a small park area near the center of the village. Major John Pitcairn, in charge of the British troops, issued an order to the Minutemen.
Lay down your arms.
The colonists refused. Suddenly, a gunshot pierced the early morning air, and the British regulars, not knowing where the shot had come from, began firing at the Americans. 8 colonists were killed, and 10 others were wounded in the barrage. Soon, the British regulars continued their march toward Concord. When they arrived, most of the troops stayed in the village to search for weapons. Another group marched west toward Barrett's farm, where it was believed a large cache of muskets and gunpowder would be found. On a small bridge leading to the farm, the second battle of the day began. 2 colonists were immediately killed in the first volley of gunfire. But then, 3 British soldiers were killed, and more than a dozen wounded. Eventually, the British regulars marched back toward Boston, but along the way, at various locations, groups of colonists fired on them. By the time they reached Boston, the British suffered almost 270 casualties, soldiers killed and wounded in the day's clashes. Colonial casualties were only 1/3 as many, so the first battle of the war encouraged a spirit of revolt throughout the eastern seaboard.
Wow. What happened next, Mr. Beanbody?
Well, let's move forward a few weeks after the battle. To May 10th, in Philadelphia, the Second Continental Congress met to determine what should be done. There were passionate debates. Some delegates wanted an immediate break from England. Others pleaded for more caution. Finally, the delegates decided to write what was called the Olive Branch Petition to King George. It stated that they were still loyal to him and pleaded for his help to resolve the quarrelsome issues between Parliament and the Americans. Even so, the delegates instructed the colonies to establish new governments, as well as form a committee to write a Declaration of Independence, just in case things couldn't be patched up, which proved to be the case, of course. For within a month, the Americans began fortifying 2 hills overlooking Boston Harbor, an excellent military position in case of an assault. On June 17th, that's exactly what happened when about 2,000 members of the British military attacked Breed's Hill, one of the fortified positions. The British troops had to retreat twice, despite their superior numbers. On their 3rd try, however, they overran the Americans. But they paid a terrible price. The British lost about half of their soldiers. More than 1,000 died or were wounded. The colonist count was about 400. So even though they lost what came to be known as the Battle of Bunker Hill, the Americans were encouraged by the heroic resistance. As it happened, King George learned of the Battle of Bunker Hill at the same time the Olive Branch Petition arrived from America.
Uh-oh.
Right. So he was in no mood to feel kindly toward his subjects in America. He would not extend his hand in friendship. Now, let's move ahead to early 1776. When a new booklet or pamphlet was offered for sale in the colonies, it was called Common Sense and was written by Thomas Paine, a remarkable man indeed. Paine was a garment worker who had immigrated from England. He had very little education and even less money, but he did have 2 very important talents. One was being able to make friends with influential people such as Benjamin Franklin and Benjamin Rush, a well-known physician and scientist whose ideas about liberty were the same as Paine's. The other talent was a flair for words. He was able to make complicated ideas so simple that practically everyone could understand them. With Rush's encouragement, Paine wrote his booklet, and within several months' time, it was read at churches, clubs, schools, and many other places all around the country. More than 125,000 copies of Common Sense were sold. Until then, an unheard-of number in American publishing. People were drawn to the pamphlet's message because it clearly stated what many colonists were only now coming to realize, that declaring independence from England had become a necessity. Now, for the first time, almost everyone was talking, openly talking, about independence. It was as if a dam had burst. Between April and July 1776, more than 90 towns and villages declared their independence from Great Britain. And on July 2nd, Congress voted for independence also. Then, 2 days later, on the 4th, made it official when the delegates signed the final version of the Declaration. Immediately, there were parades, displays of the Don't Tread on Me flags, firework programs, and other celebrations.